You've probably heard about war stories where the underdogs stand up against powerful foes, right? Imagine this: the U.S., rising from the ashes of Pearl Harbor, taking on the mighty Japanese fleet in a high-stakes showdown at Midway.
Exactly. This battle wasn't just any battle. It involved the dramatic sinking of 4 Japanese carriers, which was a monumental blow to their navy. The story feels like something out of a movie with unexpected twists and turns at every moment.
And it's not just about firefights and explosions. The battle had a huge impact on naval warfare tactics. It marked a turning point in the Pacific War and influenced how navies strategize even today.
Let's not forget about the brilliant minds behind the scenes. The Americans cracked the Japanese codes, which was like solving a complex puzzle that gave them a significant edge. This intelligence feat allowed them to anticipate and counter Japanese moves.
The stakes couldn't have been higher. With the fate of the Pacific hanging in the balance, both sides brought everything they had to this tiny speck in the ocean. The courage and strategy displayed during the Battle of Midway continue to inspire generations. The stakes couldn't have been higher. With the fate of the Pacific hanging in the balance, both sides brought everything they had to this tiny speck in the ocean. The courage and strategy displayed during the Battle of Midway continue to inspire generations.
Absolutely, the story of Midway is thrilling because it highlights resilience, ingenuity, and the high cost of warfare. It perfectly captures the essence of a decisive moment that shaped the course of World War II.
So, after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, they were really on a roll, right? They had expanded rapidly in the Pacific, taking over places like Hong Kong, the Philippines, and Singapore. Their goal was to create a huge defense perimeter to protect their territory and resources, especially after they got a scare with the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. The raid itself didn't do much damage, but it did make them realize that the U.S. could strike at the heart of Japan.
Absolutely. The Doolittle raid was more of a morale booster for the US than a military attack, but it really shook the Japanese. It was like a wake-up call. They knew they had to be more aggressive to keep control of the Pacific. This led to a lot of tension between the Japanese army and the Navy about the best way to defend their gains and strike at their enemies. The Navy, led by Yamamoto, wanted to eliminate the American carrier force, seeing it as the biggest threat.
And we can't forget how important intelligence was becoming for the Americans. They had made great strides in breaking Japanese codes. This was crucial because it allowed them to know about Japanese plans beforehand. It must have been like having a secret spy in the enemy's camp. This intelligence was what enabled the U.S. to set up an ambush at Midway. They were able to send their carriers to the right place at the right time. I mean, the Japanese were completely caught off guard.
Exactly. The code breaking was a game changer. It was called the JN-25B code, I believe. The Americans were effectively reading Japanese communications and knew there was something big planned for Midway. This allowed the US to not only prepare for the battle, but also get a sense of what the Japanese were expecting. They knew the Japanese thought the American morale was low, which was far from the truth. This misinformation really set the stage for what was to come. It's interesting how much of the battle was fought with information.
Have you ever thought about how complicated battle plans can be? Take the Battle of Midway, for example. Admiral Yamamoto and his Operation MI was a very complex plan. He wanted to capture Midway to draw out and destroy the U.S. Pacific Fleet. But do you think his plan had too many moving parts?
Absolutely. It was overcomplicated for sure. Yamamoto dispersed his forces so much that they couldn't support each other effectively. It was like setting up separate matches and expecting them to win together. Plus, he was relying on outdated intelligence, believing the US was unaware of his moves. But the Americans knew more than he thought, right?
Yes, exactly. The Americans had cracked the Japanese code, so they had a pretty clear picture of Yamamoto's plans. This gave the U.S. an upper hand, especially since they knew about the separate force moving towards the Aleutian Islands as a diversion.
The Aleutian diversion was interesting, but it didn't fool the Americans. Instead of drawing the US away, it weakened the Japanese effort at Midway because they diverted needed resources. Plus, Yamamoto underestimated American resolve. The US was outnumbered but very determined.
Underestimating the opponent was a big flaw in Yamamoto's approach. Just look at how he misjudged the American morale post-Pearl Harbor. He believed the Americans were not ready to engage in another big battle, but the Americans were prepared and waiting.
Right, the Japanese believed their string of victories had the Americans down on morale. Many Japanese leaders thought one swift battle would remove the American threat. But instead, it was this battle that turned the tables on them. Midway showed the Japanese that the Americans were ready to fight back harder than ever.
Let's dive into how the U.S. prepared for the Battle of Midway. The key factor was breaking Japan's JN-25 code. This was a game-changer. U.S. cryptanalysts were able to decode Japanese messages, revealing an attack on Midway. This gave the U.S. a strategic advantage. They knew when and where the Japanese would strike.
Exactly. This intelligence allowed Admiral Nimitz to position his carriers effectively and prepare Midway's defenses. The USS Yorktown, despite being damaged in the Battle of the Coral Sea, was quickly repaired and ready for battle. It was vital to have as many carriers operational as possible. The coordination among different forces was challenging, but the intelligence edge helped bridge those gaps.
True, and time was of the essence. The repairs on Yorktown were remarkable, completed in just 72 hours. This rapid response showcased American resilience. On top of that, coordinating the defense strategy was intense, from carrier movements to Midway air support. Everything had to align perfectly.
And the element of surprise played a crucial role in U.S. success. The Japanese never expected the Americans to know their plans, thanks to their broken codes. This allowed the Americans to set an ambush, turning Japanese plans on their heads. The presence of Yorktown and other carriers was part of that unexpected counter to Japanese expectations.
Absolutely. The U.S. had fewer carriers, but leveraged intelligent planning and strategic placement. American forces were in place before the Japanese arrived. This changed the dynamic completely. The cryptanalysts' work was invaluable, providing details that the U.S. needed to prepare effectively.
Preparation and intelligence really made a difference. Each detail of deployment was critical, from stationing aircraft on Midway to organizing fleets at sea. It reflects how critical intelligence is in warfare, not just in battles like Midway, but in strategic military planning as a whole. The Americans used every bit of knowledge to counter the Japanese.
So, the battle kicked off with a Japanese airstrike on Midway Atoll early on June 4th. They sent a big wave of bombers and fighters, which flew right over the island. But, the surprising part was how tough Midway's defenses were. They had these fighter planes that, although not the best and a bit older, really gave it their all in defending the skies over the island.
Exactly. Even though the American pilots were flying outdated aircraft, their determination was incredible. It was like a David and Goliath situation up in the air. While the Japanese were prepared for a quick and easy fight, they met a fiercer resistance than expected. And while this was happening, the US was readying their first counterstrike, launching planes from Midway to hit back at the Japanese fleet.
Yeah, those initial American strikes from Midway, especially the torpedo planes, took an enormous risk. Many were shot down by the Japanese fighter planes. These guys really showed bravery, flying into such a deadly environment. But on the Japanese side, things weren't perfectly smooth. Nagumo, the Japanese commander, hesitated and faced some internal issues like rearming problems, which definitely impacted their response.
Absolutely, those delays were critical. The rearming of planes took longer than expected, which caused missed opportunities for the Japanese. Plus, with the US having broken their codes, the Japanese were unaware of what the Americans knew. It was a tense situation. The sacrifice of the American torpedo squadrons bought time and played a part in disrupting the Japanese process. It's a clear case where bravery and some strategic missteps played pivotal roles.
The turning point of the Battle of Midway was an absolutely thrilling moment in history. The American dive bombers really made the day. Can you imagine being part of a tiny fleet, going against such a mighty Japanese force? Then, boom, those dive bombers take out Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu in one strong move.
Oh, it was an incredible feat. Those ships were the pride of the Japanese Navy, and losing them was a huge blow. That success changed everything. Don't you think the USS Enterprise and Yorktown played crucial roles in this turning point too? Especially considering how Yorktown was hastily repaired from earlier damage and still managed to make such a difference.
Absolutely. The fact that Yorktown was repaired in just 3 days is amazing in itself. And what about the confusion among the Japanese? Nagumo faced a real mess at sea: fires, confusion, and an urgent need to change tactics. It was as if the Americans were one step ahead, and they seized that momentum shift perfectly.
Definitely, and the change in momentum was dramatic. Nagumo's hesitation certainly played into the Americans' hands. His delay in launching a counterattack left the carriers vulnerable during those key moments. The Americans took full advantage of it with their dive bombers' timely arrival. From that point on, it was a turning point that the Japanese couldn't recover from.
The Battle of Midway was an incredible moment during World War II. After the damage to Japanese carriers like Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu, the tide turned. Hiryu was the last hope for the Japanese, but even it couldn't hold on against the relentless American attacks. It was heavily hit by bombs, leaving it blazing. The battle was turning into a disaster for Japan.
Yes, the sinking of Hiryu was a major blow. It left Yamamoto with no choice but to order a retreat. The US forces were in strong positions and proved very effective against the Japanese fleet. Yamamoto's fleet had no option but to withdraw, marking a significant turning point in the Pacific War. Midway put Japan on the defensive as the US began to take the lead in the region.
After the battle, the Americans focused on salvaging what they could. Ships like the Yorktown suffered damage, and efforts were made to repair or rescue what was left. Despite this, the battle ensured that Japanese naval capabilities would take a long time to recover. It took a major toll on their fleet and morale. The US, on the other hand, gained immense confidence.
Absolutely, the aftermath of Midway was profound. It marked a dramatic shift in the Pacific War, showcasing the importance of intelligence and strategy in triumphing against strong adversaries. Japan struggled to replace lost carriers, aircraft, and crucially, the experienced pilots. Midway didn't just change battles, it transformed the entire naval war strategy and future engagements.
Midway's significance is remembered as not just stopping Japanese expansion, but as a testament to how intelligence breakthroughs and strategic boldness can defy the odds. It's a story of resilience and innovation, set against a backdrop of great tension and pressure. It provided a solid morale boost for the US, proving that the underdog can indeed win with the right conditions.
Absolutely, many historians see Midway as one of the decisive blows in naval history. It proved that fortune could favor those who make bold, informed moves despite being outnumbered. The battle set new paradigms for naval warfare, reinforcing that with excellent planning and courage, even the most daunting challenges can be faced head-on and overcome. It's a lesson that resonates far beyond the era.
Reflecting on the Battle of Midway, it's clear that this was a pivotal moment in World War II. The US defied the odds and turned the tides in the Pacific. The intelligence breakthroughs and strategic maneuvers were decisive. It's fascinating to see how a few crucial decisions and the ability to intercept Japanese plans made such a huge difference. Reflecting on the Battle of Midway, it's clear that this was a pivotal moment in World War II. The US defied the odds and turned the tides in the Pacific. The intelligence breakthroughs and strategic maneuvers were decisive. It's fascinating to see how a few crucial decisions and the ability to intercept Japanese plans made such a huge difference.
Absolutely, it shows how stories of intelligence and strategy can completely change the outcome of a war. This was not just a battle, but a turning point in naval warfare. It set the stage for US forces to become more dominant in the Pacific. The sacrifices made and the bravery shown by those who were involved were extraordinary and have left lasting lessons for military strategy.
Indeed, one can't help but think about the courage it took for those codebreakers, pilots, and sailors to do what they did. Their actions show how much one battle can influence history. But enough from us. We'd love to know what you're curious about. Is there a specific biography or historical event you want us to cover next? Let us know.
And while you're sharing your thoughts, remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed our discussion and subscribe to stay updated with our future episodes. Your support helps us bring more engaging content about historical events that shaped our world today. We look forward to exploring more stories with you. Until next time.